David's fingers drummed against the table as he watched another couple walk past the restaurant window. They were laughing together, arms linked, heading somewhere warm and happy. He looked down at his water glass and wondered for the third time if this whole thing was a terrible mistake. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversation around him. Starlight Bistro sat in the commercial district of New Horizon Station, where humans and aliens mixed freely under soft lighting that mimicked Earth's evening glow. David had picked a table near the window where he could see the corridor outside. Where he could watch for her, his tablet showed 7:15 p.m. She was 15 minutes late. David Chen worked as an aerospace engineer, fixing environmental systems that kept the massive orbital habitat running smoothly. He was good at his job because it involved predictable problems with logical solutions. Dating was neither predictable nor logical, which explained why he hadn't done it in 2 years. His sister had practically forced him to download Universal Hearts, the interspecies dating app. "It's Christmas, David," she'd said over their video call last week. "You can't spend another holiday alone in your quarters eating instant noodles," so he'd created a profile, answered questions about his interests and personality, let the algorithm do its work. When Lyra's profile appeared as a match, he'd stared at it for 10 minutes before sending a message. She was Drakari, one of the dragon-like species that had joined the galactic community 30 years ago. Single parent, engineer like him, enjoyed old Earth movies and hiking simulations. They'd messaged back and forth for a week. Nothing deep, just casual conversation that felt surprisingly easy. When she suggested meeting for dinner on Christmas Eve, David had agreed before his anxiety could talk him out of it. Now he sat alone at a table set for 2, watching the minutes tick by. "Can I get you anything else while you wait?" The waiter appeared beside him, a centaurian named Besh with kind eyes and 4 arms. "Perhaps an appetizer?" "Just water is fine, thanks." David tried to smile. "I'm sure she'll be here soon." Besh nodded sympathetically and moved away. David knew that look. It was the same look the host had given him when he'd asked for a table for 20 minutes ago. The look that said they'd seen this before. Someone waiting alone. Hope slowly turning to embarrassment. His ex-wife's voice echoed in his memory. "You're too boring, David, too predictable. Nothing exciting ever happens with you." She'd said it during their last argument 2 years and 3 months ago. The divorce had been finalized within 6 months, and David had thrown himself into work, avoiding anything that resembled a social life. Maybe she was right. Maybe he was too boring for someone like Lyra to bother showing up for. David checked his communicator again. No messages. He pulled up Lyra's profile picture, studying it in the dim light. She looked strong and confident, her copper and gold scales catching the light. Her smile seemed genuine in the photo. But photos could lie. Around him, other diners celebrated Christmas Eve with warmth and laughter. A human family at one table, their children excited about Santa's arrival. A mixed group of aliens trying human holiday foods for the first time. Even the staff wore festive decorations, little holographic snowflakes pinned to their uniforms. David had arrived 10 minutes early, typical for him. He'd wanted to seem eager without being desperate. Now at 7:30, half an hour past their scheduled meeting time, he just felt foolish. He watched a Drakari family walk past the window outside. The mother was herding 2 small children, their scales bright green and blue. The father carried packages, probably last-minute gifts. They looked happy, complete. David's chest tightened. He wasn't sure what hurt more, being stood up or watching everyone else live the life he'd convinced himself he didn't need. "Still doing okay?" Besh returned, this time carrying a small plate. "Complimentary appetizer. Chef's special tonight. You don't have to do that." "I know." Besh set the plate down gently. "But it's Christmas Eve. Nobody should sit alone on Christmas Eve." The kindness almost broke something in David. He managed a real smile this time. "Thank you." "She might still come," Besh offered. Station transit was backed up earlier. Medical emergency in Sector 3. David nodded, not quite believing it, but appreciating the attempt. He checked the time again. 7:35, he'd give it until 8:30, he decided. That seemed reasonable. Then he'd pay his bill, walk back to his empty quarters, and message his sister that she'd been right to worry about him. The appetizer was good. Some kind of pastry filled with spiced vegetables. David ate slowly, making it last. Around him, the restaurant continued its cheerful buzz. Someone laughed loudly at a nearby table. Christmas music played softly through the speakers, mixing Earth traditions with alien melodies. He thought about his mother, who'd passed away 5 years ago. She'd raised him and his sister alone after their father left. Single-parent household, money always tight, but she'd made every Christmas special somehow. She would have liked the idea of him putting himself out there again. She would have told you to stay, he muttered to himself. Give her a chance, so he stayed. He sipped his water. He watched the corridor outside. He tried not to check the time every 30 seconds and failed. At 8:15, David signaled for the check. Besh brought it over with that same sympathetic expression. I'm sorry it didn't work out, the waiter said softly. Yeah. Me too. David pulled out his credit chip. At 8:27, he was still sitting there trying to convince himself to actually leave. The restaurant door burst open with enough force to make several diners look up. A Drakari female rushed inside, scales shimmering copper and gold under the lights. She was tall, powerful, clearly flustered. She carried a small bag and her eyes scanned the restaurant frantically. Their gazes met across the room. David's heart, which had been slowly sinking for the past 90 minutes, suddenly jumped into his throat. She was here. She'd come. Lyra crossed the restaurant in 4 long strides, her expression mortified. David. Her voice was musical despite the panic in it. Please tell me you're David. I am so sorry. David stood up automatically, his prepared angry speech evaporating. Up close, she was even more impressive than her photos. But what struck him most was the genuine distress in her golden eyes. I'm David, he managed. You're Lyra. I'm so sorry I'm late. I wanted to message, but everything happened so fast and I just... She stopped, taking a breath. Is it too late? Have I completely ruined this? David looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't some careless person who'd forgotten about him. Something had clearly gone very wrong with her evening. The relief in her expression when he'd confirmed his identity was too real to be fake. Sit down, he said, surprising himself. Tell me what happened. Lyra sank into the chair across from him like her legs might give out. Thank you. Thank you for waiting. Besh appeared with perfect timing, setting down a menu and a glass of water. He caught David's eye and smiled, a knowing expression that said he'd seen this kind of twist before. David settled back into his seat, his earlier frustration replaced by curiosity. She'd come. Against whatever had delayed her, she'd come. That had to mean something. Start from the beginning, David said. I've got time. Lyra's hands shook slightly as she reached for her water glass. David noticed but didn't comment. She took a long drink, then set the glass down with careful precision like she was trying to steady herself. My daughter Kira has a fever, she said, the words tumbling out. She was fine this morning, completely healthy. Then an hour before I was supposed to leave, she started burning up. I had to take her to the medical center. David felt his chest loosen. Not carelessness. Not disinterest. A sick child. Is she okay? Lyra blinked at him, surprise crossing her features. Yes, they gave her medicine. Scale flu, they think. Common, but it spikes fast in young Drakari. She pulled out her datapad with trembling fingers, scrolling quickly before turning it toward him. This is her. The image showed a small Drakari child curled up on a medical bed. Her scales were bright green, duller now from illness, and her golden eyes looked miserable. She clutched a worn stuffed animal shaped like some earth creature David couldn't quite identify. She looks uncomfortable, David said gently. She was terrified. Hates the medical center. Lyra pulled the datapad back, staring at the image. My babysitter canceled last minute. Had a family emergency of her own. I tried to message you, but I was sitting in that waiting room and everything was happening too fast and I couldn't think straight. But you came anyway. I found my neighbor, Ruth, sweet woman, she's watched Kira before. She agreed to stay until I got back. Lyra finally met his eyes again. I almost didn't come. Almost sent you a message saying I couldn't make it, but I really wanted to meet you, David. Our conversations this week, they meant something to me. David found himself smiling without planning to. They meant something to me too. The tension in Lyra's shoulders eased slightly. Besh returned, taking their orders with efficient kindness. David ordered something simple. Lyra chose a dish he didn't recognize, her voice steadier now. When the waiter left, silence fell between them. Not uncomfortable, but full of things neither knew quite how to say. I should have messaged, Lyra said again. You should have, David agreed. But you're here now. That's what matters. Most people would have left. I almost did. 3 times, actually. David smiled ruefully. But something kept me in that chair. Stubbornness, maybe. Lyra laughed, a musical sound that seemed to surprise even her. My mate used to say stubbornness was a survival trait. He said I had enough for both of us. Your mate? David asked carefully, noticing her use of past tense. He died 4 years ago. Mining accident on one of the outer stations. Lyra's voice remained steady, the grief worn smooth by time. Kira was 2. Doesn't remember him much, which breaks my heart every time I think about it. I'm sorry. Me too. She traced patterns on the table with one claw. I moved here 3 years ago. Fresh start, better opportunities. Better schools for Kira. But it's lonely sometimes being a single parent in a place where you don't know many people. David understood that loneliness more than she probably realized. I moved here after my divorce. 2 years ago now. Wanted to get away from Earth, from all the memories. What happened? Lyra asked, then immediately looked apologetic. Sorry, that's too personal for a first date. No, it's okay. David considered his words. She said I was boring. Too predictable. She wanted excitement and adventure, and I wanted stability and routine. Turned out those things don't mix well in a marriage. Stability isn't boring, Lyra said firmly. Stability is what keeps everything else from falling apart. Their food arrived. David watched Lyra eat, noting how she kept checking her communicator even though it sat silent on the table. The worry for her daughter was constant just below the surface. Tell me about your work, David said, partly to distract her, partly because he genuinely wanted to know. Lyra's face brightened immediately. I specialize in hull integrity, stress analysis, repair protocols, structural reinforcement. When the station takes damage from debris or needs expansion, my team figures out how to keep everyone safe. I work on environmental systems, David offered. Air recycling, temperature control, pressure regulation. We probably overlap sometimes. Environmental systems affect hull stress, Lyra agreed, warming to the topic. When you adjust internal pressure, we have to compensate on the structural side. They fell into easy technical discussion, the kind that only 2 engineers could truly appreciate. David found himself relaxing more than he had in months. Lyra knew her field brilliantly, and she listened to his explanations with genuine interest rather than polite patience. You actually care about air filtration efficiency rates, Lyra said at one point, something like wonder in her voice. You actually care about metal fatigue patterns, David countered. They grinned at each other like they'd discovered something rare and precious. The conversation flowed naturally after that. Lyra talked about Kira's obsession with earth animals, how she made Lyra read picture books about elephants and dolphins every night. David shared stories about his niece who was around Kira's age and equally obsessed with holo shows about space pirates. Dating has been impossible, Lyra admitted over dessert. Most people hear single parent and suddenly remember they have somewhere else to be. The ones who stick around usually want to meet Kira immediately, like she's some kind of test they need to pass. They don't get that she's not an obstacle. She's my life. David nodded slowly. My sister kept telling me I needed to put myself out there, but after the divorce I convinced myself I was fine alone. Easier than risking getting hurt again. But you took a chance anyway. So did you. Lyra's communicator buzzed, her entire body tensed, eyes dropping to the screen. David watched her face shift from relaxed to worried in an instant. It's Ruth, she said, already standing. Kira's fever spiked. She's crying for me. Go, David said immediately. I'm so sorry. This was just starting to be really nice and I have to. Lyra gathered her bag, movements jerky with stress. David stood too, making a decision that surprised him even as the words left his mouth. Let me come with you. Lyra stopped moving. What? I'm certified in pediatric first aid. Part of my job training. That was true, though not exactly relevant. And I don't want this to end yet. You want to come meet my sick daughter? On our first date? Yeah, David said, more certain now. I really do. Lyra stared at him like he'd spoken in an alien language she didn't know. Why would you do that? Because it's the right thing to do. David pulled his credit chip out, leaving payment on the table. And because you matter. What matters to you matters. You don't even know us. Then let me start learning. For a long moment, Lyra didn't move. David could see the war happening behind her eyes. Decades of self-reliance fighting against the desperate need for support. Finally, she nodded once. Okay, but if this scares you off, just be honest about it. I can't handle polite lies, not with Kira involved. I promise honesty, David said. They left the restaurant together, moving quickly through corridors decorated with Christmas lights and holographic snowflakes. Other people celebrated around them, but Lyra's focus was entirely on getting home. David kept pace, his longer human stride matching her hurried steps easily. This is insane, Lyra muttered as they navigated a crowded junction. This is our first date and you're about to meet my six-year-old daughter. Yeah, David agreed. But somehow it feels right anyway. Lyra glanced at him, something complicated in her expression. You're either incredibly kind or incredibly foolish. Can't it be both? Despite everything, Lyra laughed. They turned down a quieter corridor leading to the residential sectors. Christmas decorations here were more personal. Individual quarters showing their occupants' celebrations through window displays and door wreaths. She might not like you, Lyra warned. She's shy around humans. Doesn't see many of them in her daily life. That's okay. I'm pretty awkward around 6-year-olds too. You mentioned a niece, who lives on Earth with my sister. I haven't seen her in person in 2 years. David smiled sadly. I'm good at running away from things that matter. But you didn't run tonight. No, David said quietly. I didn't. They reached Lyra's quarters. She placed her hand on the entry panel, hesitating for just a moment before the door slid open. Warm light spilled into the corridor along with the sound of a child crying softly. I'm home, Lyra called out, stepping inside. Ruth, how is she? David followed, crossing the threshold into their lives with no idea what would happen next, but certain he'd made the right choice. Whatever came after, he'd chosen to stay. That meant something. To him, maybe to them too. Ruth met them in the small living area, relief clear on her weathered face. The elderly human woman had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and her silver hair was pulled back in a practical bun. Thank goodness you're back, she said, clasping Lyra's hands. The medicine started wearing off. She's been asking for you constantly. How high is the fever? Lyra was already moving toward the bedroom. 38.9 when I last checked 10 minutes ago. Ruth noticed David hovering near the entrance. Oh, you brought company. This is David, he's... Lyra paused, clearly not knowing how to finish that sentence. A friend, David supplied. Is there anything I can do to help? Ruth studied him for a moment, then smiled warmly. Good man. Lyra's been handling everything alone for too long. She collected her coat from a nearby chair. I'll let you folks handle it from here. Call me if you need anything, dear. After Ruth left, David got his first real look at Lyra's home. The quarters were modest but clearly decorated with care. Children's drawings covered one wall, colorful images of dragons and spaceships and what might have been attempts at Earth animals. A small Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with a mix of human ornaments and what he assumed were Drakari traditional items. Soft lighting gave everything a warm glow. Wait here, Lyra said, disappearing down a short hallway. David stood awkwardly in the living area, listening to Lyra's soft voice murmuring comfort in a language he didn't understand. Drakari, he assumed. The musical quality of it carried through the walls. Then came a child's voice, weak and congested, responding. He noticed photos on a small shelf, Lyra and a male Drakari, both younger, standing together with their tails entwined. The same male holding a tiny green bundle that must have been baby Kira. Lyra alone with a toddler. Then just Lyra and Kira at various ages, the male absent from the more recent pictures. A family rebuilt around an absence, David? Lyra appeared in the hallway entrance. She's asking about you. The human her mama brought home. Does she want me to leave? No, she wants to see if you're real. Lyra smiled tiredly. Humans are still pretty exotic to her generation. She's seen them on the station but never actually met one. David followed Lyra down the hallway to a small bedroom. Glow stars covered the ceiling, casting gentle light over walls painted in soft greens and blues. Posters of Earth animals competed for space with images of spaceships and distant planets. And in the center of it all, curled up in a bed too big for her, was Kira. She looked smaller than in the photo, her green scales dull with fever. Large golden eyes tracked David's movement as he entered, wariness and curiosity mixing in her expression. She clutched the same worn stuffed animal from the medical center picture, something that might have been meant to be a dog. "Hi, Kira," David said softly, staying near the door. "My name is David." Kira studied him for a long moment. "You're really tall. Most humans are," David agreed. "Your mama is taller than me, though." "Mama's the tallest." Kira's voice was congested, each word clearly an effort. "Are you a real human?" Real, David confirmed. "Want me to prove it?" Kira nodded cautiously. David held up his hand, showing his 5 fingers. "Humans have 5 fingers on each hand, see? And our skin is soft, not scales." He kept his distance, letting her observe without pressure. Can I touch?" Kira asked, glancing at Lyra for permission. "If David says it's okay," Lyra said, moving to sit on the edge of the bed. David crossed the room slowly, sitting in a chair beside the bed. He held out his hand, palm up. Kira reached out with one small claw, touching his skin with surprising gentleness. "It's warm," she said, wonder in her voice. "And squishy. That's what skin is like," David explained. "No scales to protect it, so we have to be more careful." "Does it hurt?" "Not usually. Only if I bump into something or get cut." Kira traced a small circle on his palm, fascinated. Then she pulled her hand back and sneezed, a small burst of harmless flame coming with it. She looked mortified. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." "It's okay," David said calmly, though internally he was revising his understanding of Drakari biology. Sneezing fire, that was new information. "You didn't hurt anything." "Humans burn easy," Kira said miserably. "Teacher told us. We have to be careful around humans or we hurt them on accident." "You were very careful," David assured her. "And you know what? Humans are tougher than people think. We come from a planet where lots of things tried to eat us, so we learned to be strong." Kira's eyes widened. "Things tried to eat you?" "Well, not me personally. But my ancestors, yeah. Big cats, bears, even tiny things like bacteria. Earth is kind of a dangerous place. Mama says Earth is beautiful." "It is. Beautiful and dangerous." David glanced at Lyra, who was watching him with an unreadable expression. "Kinda like your mama, I bet." Kira giggled, then coughed. Lyra immediately reached for a scanner on the bedside table, checking readings with practiced efficiency. "Still 38.9, she muttered. "The medicine should be working better than this." "It's scale flu season," David said. "Hits hard but breaks fast, usually. I read about it when I first came to the station." "You studied Drakari illnesses?" Lyra looked surprised. "I studied a lot of things. Wanted to understand my neighbors." David turned back to Kira. "You know what helps when you don't feel good? Stories, want to hear one?" Kira nodded eagerly, settling deeper into her pillows. David racked his brain for something appropriate. Once there was a very small dragon who lived on a very big mountain. He told her a story his mother used to tell him, modified on the fly to feature dragons instead of humans, about a small creature who felt ordinary, until they discovered their gift for making friends with everyone they met. Kira listened with rapt attention, occasionally asking questions that David incorporated into the narrative. Lyra stood quietly, fetching cool cloths and medicine. David watched her work between sentences of his story, noting the practiced efficiency of her movements. How many nights had she done this alone? How many times had Kira been sick with no one to help? When the story ended, Kira's eyes were drooping. "Will you tell another one tomorrow?" "If your mama says it's okay, I'd be happy to." "She likes you," Kira said, matter of fact. "I can tell," Lyra made a choking sound. "Kira, that's not—" "We just met." "But it's true." Kira yawned, showing small, sharp teeth. "You smile different when you look at him. The happy smile, not the tired smile." David carefully did not look at Lyra, giving her the privacy of her embarrassment. "You should sleep, Kira. Rest helps your body fight the fever." "Don't leave yet," Kira said, suddenly urgent. "Please." "I'll stay until you fall asleep," David promised. It took another 20 minutes. David told another shorter story while Lyra applied cooling strips to Kira's forehead. Finally, the little Drakari's eyes closed, her breathing evening out into sleep. They tiptoed out of the room, leaving the door cracked open. In the living area, Lyra sank onto the couch like all her energy had drained at once. "You were amazing with her," she said quietly. David sat in a nearby chair, maintaining respectful distance. "She's a great kid, she is. But most people don't see that immediately. They see complications, responsibility, a reason to run." Lyra rubbed her face with both hands. "You told her a story. You stayed. Why? Because she asked me to. Because she needed it. David leaned forward, elbows on his knees. And because I meant what I said at the restaurant. I didn't want this to end. This is insane, Lyra said, but without heat. We met 3 hours ago. Yeah. You're sitting in my home while my daughter sleeps down the hall. Yeah. And you're not running. No, David said simply. I'm not. Lyra looked at him for a long moment. I'm scared of this. Of how fast this feels. Me too. But you're still here. Still here, David confirmed. From the bedroom, Kira called out in her sleep, a small distressed sound. Lyra was on her feet instantly, but the sound didn't repeat. She stood in the hallway, tension gradually leaving her shoulders. She does that sometimes. Dreams about things she doesn't remember clearly. Lyra returned to the couch. About him. Her father. Tell me about him, David said. If you want to, so Lyra did. She talked about her mate, about the accident, about rebuilding a life from grief. She talked about moving to the station, about learning to be both parents to Kira, about the loneliness that crept in during quiet moments. David listened. He didn't offer platitudes or try to fix anything. He just listened, present and attentive. When Lyra's voice cracked, he handed her tissues. When she apologized for talking so much, he told her to keep going. Outside, the station's bells chimed midnight. Christmas had arrived officially. It's Christmas, Lyra said, checking her chronometer with surprise. I completely forgot. Best Christmas Eve I've had in years, David said. Lyra laughed, slightly hysterical. Spent with a sick child and a stranger who showed up at your door? Spent with good people, David corrected. That's all that matters. They talked for another hour, voices low, about work and hobbies and the small details that make up a life. The conversation felt easier now, like they'd crossed some invisible threshold. Kira's illness had stripped away pretense, left them with just honesty and presence. Eventually, David noticed Lyra yawning. You should sleep, he said. It's late. You should go home, Lyra countered. You've been here for hours, but neither of them moved. The quiet felt too fragile to break. Finally, David stood. I should let you rest. Lyra walked him to the door, gratitude and something else in her expression. Thank you. For everything. For staying. Thank you for letting me. David hesitated. Would it be okay if I came back tomorrow? Brought breakfast, maybe? You want to come back? Very much. Lyra smiled, tired but genuine. We'd like that. Both of us. David stepped into the corridor, turning back one more time. Good night, Lyra. Good night, David. The door slid closed. David walked back to his quarters through empty hallways, thinking about golden eyes and musical laughter and a little girl who sneezed fire. Thinking about how sometimes the best things happen when you choose to stay instead of run. His communicator buzzed. A message from Lyra. I'm terrified of how right this feels. But thank you for tonight. Merry Christmas. David smiled and typed back. Merry Christmas. I'll be there in the morning, promise. And he meant it with every fiber of his being. Simulated sunlight warmed David's face as he blinked awake, momentarily confused about where he was. The couch cushions pressed against his back in an unfamiliar way. Then memory returned and he sat up quickly, looking around Lyra's living area. He'd fallen asleep. The last thing he remembered was sitting down to rest his eyes for just a moment, while Lyra checked on Kira one more time. That had been around 2 a.m. Now soft light filtered through the window, and the chronometer showed 6:30. You're awake? Lyra stood in the kitchen area, wearing comfortable home clothes, her copper scales catching the morning light. I tried to wake you around 3 to send you home, but you were completely gone. I gave up and put a blanket over you. David noticed the blanket for the first time, folded neatly beside him. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to just crash here. Don't be. You had a long night. Lyra smiled, looking more rested than she had hours ago. Coffee? I learned to make it human style for Kira. She's weirdly obsessed with the smell. You don't have to. David, you stayed with my sick daughter until after midnight on our first date. I can make you coffee. David accepted the mug she offered, the warmth spreading through his hands. The coffee was strong and good, better than what he usually made in his quarters. How's Kira? Fever broke around 4 a.m. She's still sleeping, but her scales look brighter already. Lyra leaned against the counter, cradling her own mug. Scale flu hits hard but leaves fast once it turns. She'll be back to her normal chaos by this afternoon. That's good. They stood in comfortable silence, drinking coffee as the station's artificial morning brightened around them. David studied Lyra's home in better light. The Christmas tree had handmade ornaments mixed with store-bought ones. A small menorah sat on a shelf, one he'd missed last night. Photos covered every available surface, chronicling Kira's growth from tiny hatchling to the 6-year-old sleeping down the hall. "I can't believe you stayed," Lyra said quietly. "I keep expecting to wake up and find out this whole thing was some fever dream. I'm real, and I'm here. Why?" The question wasn't angry, just genuinely baffled. "You could have left the restaurant. Could have said no when I rushed home. Could have left any time last night." David considered his answer carefully, because leaving would have been easier. "And I'm tired of choosing easy over right." Lyra set down her mug, crossed to where he stood, and hugged him. Not romantic, just grateful and exhausted and overwhelmed. David hugged her back, feeling her strength and vulnerability in equal measure. "Thank you," she whispered against his shoulder. Before David could respond, a small voice called from the bedroom. "Mama, is it Christmas? Did Santa come?" Lyra pulled back, wiping her eyes quickly. "That's my cue. You want to stay for breakfast? I was going to make pancakes. Kira's obsessed with them." "I'd love to." Kira appeared in the hallway moments later, her scales bright green again, the dullness of fever completely gone. She saw David and her whole face lit up. "You came back. You came back like you promised." "Of course I did." Kira ran to him, stopping just short of actual impact in a show of self-control impressive for her age. "It's Christmas. Can we open presents now, Mama, can we?" "After breakfast," Lyra said firmly. "Medicine first, then food, then presents." Kira groaned but accepted the medicine Lyra offered without complaint. David helped with breakfast, learning Lyra's kitchen while she directed. The pancakes were human style, something Lyra had clearly practiced. Kira ate 3 while telling David everything she knew about Christmas, which was an enthusiastic if slightly confused mix of traditions. After breakfast, Kira led them to the Christmas tree with barely contained excitement. She opened presents while Lyra took photos, clearly a family tradition. Art supplies, a new stylus for her data pad, a book of Earth animal stories. Each gift was met with genuine delight. "Thank you, Mama. These are perfect." Kira hugged her mother fiercely. David felt like an intruder on their private moment, but Kira pulled him down to sit with them. "Look, David. Real colored pencils from Earth. Mama said they're special because they use old technology." "They are special," David agreed. "My mother used to have a set." Something in his tone made Kira look at him more carefully. "You miss your mama?" "Yeah, she died a few years ago." "My papa died too." Kira said it simply, matter of fact. "I don't remember him much." "Is that bad?" "No, sweetheart. It's just how life works sometimes." David glanced at Lyra, who nodded permission to continue. "But the people we love stay with us in other ways. Your mama tells you about him, right?" "All the time." "She says he loved to make people laugh, and he was really good at fixing things." Kira fingered her stuffed animal thoughtfully. "He gave me this before he went away. Mama says he wanted me to have something to hug." David's throat tightened. "That's a good gift." "You can hug it too if you want," Kira offered generously. "You look like you need a hug." Lyra made a choked sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. David accepted the stuffed animal, holding it carefully. It was worn soft from years of love, one ear slightly torn and carefully mended. "Thank you, Kira. That's very kind." They sat together on the floor, surrounded by wrapping paper and new treasures. David pulled out his communicator, sending a quick message. Kira was showing him how to properly appreciate each colored pencil when the door chimed. "That was fast," Lyra said, moving to answer it. A delivery drone hovered outside, holding a small package. Lyra brought it in, looking confused. "David? This is addressed to Kira." David felt his nervousness spike. I messaged my sister this morning. Asked her to send something from my quarters. I hope that's okay." Lyra handed the package to Kira, who tore into it with enthusiasm. Inside was a book, actual paper pages bound in worn leather. The title was faded but readable. Earth Tales for Young Readers. "It's a book." Kira handled it reverently. "A real paper book. My mother read it to me when I was your age," David explained, nervous now. "Then I read it to my niece. I thought, maybe you'd like it too, but if it's too much I can take it back." Lyra was staring at him, tears sliding down her scales. "David, this is..." This is an antique. This is valuable. Stories are meant to be shared, David said simply. And I think Kira will take good care of it. I will, Kira promised, already carefully turning pages. I'll be so careful, I promise. Lyra pulled David aside while Kira explored the book. You didn't have to do this. I wanted to. She made me feel welcome last night when she didn't have to, when she wasn't feeling well. David met her eyes. Your daughter is amazing, Lyra. You've done an incredible job raising her. I'm terrified, Lyra admitted. We've known each other for one day. One day, David. And you're here in my home on Christmas morning giving my daughter irreplaceable books. This is too fast, I know, but it doesn't feel fast. It feels right. David took her hands carefully. If you want me to slow down, I will. If you want me to leave, I'll go. But I won't lie and say I don't want this. All of this. Lyra looked back at Kira, who was reading with total absorption. She likes you. Really likes you. If this doesn't work out, then we'll handle it carefully and make sure she's okay. I promise. You can't promise that. You're right. But I can promise I'll try my hardest to not hurt either of you. Kira looked up from her book. David, will you read this to me? The words are kind of hard. David glanced at Lyra, who nodded. They settled on the couch, Kira between them, and David read. His mother's voice echoed in his memory. The same stories he'd heard as a child now passed to a little Drakari girl in an orbital habitat above Earth. Lyra's head rested against his shoulder by the third story. Kira had curled up against both of them, completely comfortable, completely trusting. David kept reading, his voice steady, thinking about how a disastrous blind date had somehow become the best Christmas he'd had in years. When Kira finally fell asleep mid-story, worn out from her illness and excitement, David carefully set the book aside. She's usually not this trusting, Lyra whispered. It took her weeks to warm up to Ruth. Maybe she sensed I'm trustworthy. Or maybe she's 6 and not the best judge of character. David smiled. That too. They sat in comfortable silence, Kira sleeping between them. Outside, the station hummed with life. Families celebrated, people lived their normal lives, completely unaware that David's entire world had shifted in the past 24 hours. I should probably go home, David said eventually. Let you two have your Christmas. Or you could stay, Lyra offered. We're just going to watch movies later. Nothing special. That sounds perfect. They stayed on the couch until Kira woke up, groggy but demanding hot chocolate. David helped make it while Lyra queued up movies on their entertainment system. They watched Earth classics that Kira had seen a dozen times, her providing running commentary on all her favorite parts. Ruth stopped by in the afternoon with Christmas cookies. She took one look at the domestic scene and smiled knowingly at Lyra. Didn't I tell you good things would come? The elderly woman said. Just had to be patient. After Ruth left, other neighbors dropped by briefly. Station tradition, apparently. Checking in on Christmas. Each time, Lyra introduced David simply as her friend. The acceptance was easy and natural. Nobody questioned his presence. They just welcomed him. As evening approached, David finally stood to leave. He'd been there almost 12 hours, and his body was reminding him he hadn't been to his own quarters since yesterday morning. Will you come back tomorrow? Kira asked, tugging on his sleeve. Please? David looked at Lyra. She nodded, almost shy. If you want to. No pressure. I'd like that. At the door, Lyra stopped him. Thank you. For everything. For staying when you could have run. For being kind to Kira. For making this Christmas special. Thank you for letting me be here. They stood close, aware of Kira watching from the couch, not quite ready to cross certain lines, but both feeling the pull. I'll see you tomorrow? Lyra asked. Count on it. David walked back to his quarters, exhausted and happy. His communicator buzzed with a message from his sister. Details now, the book was for a kid? He smiled and typed back, best decision I ever made. I'll call you tomorrow. Another message came in, this time from Lyra. Kira wants me to tell you that you're her second favorite human now. After Ruth, high praise apparently. David laughed and sent back, I'll take it. What about you? Where do I rank? The response took a few minutes. Too early to tell. But you're definitely top 5. Maybe even top 3. I can work with that. He fell asleep smiling, already planning what to bring for breakfast the next morning. Lyra's communicator buzzed at 6 p.m. on December 26th, its emergency tone cutting through the peaceful afternoon. David watched her face change as she read the message, professional focus replacing the relaxed happiness of moments before. Hull breach. Sector 7. She was already moving, grabbing her work jacket. I have to go. I'm the senior engineer on duty. Kira looked up from her coloring, immediate worry in her golden eyes. How bad, Mama? Bad enough they need me now. Lyra's hands fumbled with her jacket seals. I'm so sorry, baby. On Christmas break, I know. David stood from where he'd been helping Kira with her new art supplies. I'll stay with her. Lyra stopped moving. David, you don't have to. I want to. He met her eyes steadily. You need to go save people. I'll take care of Kira. But we just... Lyra gestured helplessly between them. We've known each other 2 days. Mama, people might get hurt. Kira's voice was small but brave. You have to go fix it. Lyra knelt beside her daughter, hands gentle on small shoulders. I'll be as fast as I can. David will stay with you, okay? Okay, Mama. Kira hugged her fiercely. Be careful. David followed Lyra to the door. She pulled out a spare access card and emergency codes, pressing them into his hand. If anything happens, anything at all, contact me immediately. Medical is on speed dial. Ruth's number is there too. Her words came fast, anxiety and trust mixing in equal measure. Bedtime is 8:30 on school nights, but it's still holiday break, so 9 is fine. She likes 1 story minimum. No sugar after 7 p.m. or she'll never sleep. And David? Yeah? I'm trusting you with the most important thing in my life. David felt the weight of those words settle in his chest. I know I've got this. Go save people. Lyra kissed Kira goodbye, looked at David one more time with an expression he couldn't quite read, and left. The door slid shut behind her, and suddenly David was alone with a 6-year-old who was trying very hard to be brave. Your mama is really good at her job, David said, settling back on the floor beside Kira. She'll be safe. I know. But Kira's scales had dulled slightly, fear creeping in despite her words. Mama's job is dangerous sometimes. She doesn't tell me, but I hear her talking to Ruth. David decided honesty was better than empty reassurance. It can be dangerous, but she has training and a whole team. They know how to stay safe. What if something bad happens? Then I'm here, and I'll make sure you're okay no matter what. David offered his hand. Deal? Kira took it, her small claws careful against his skin. Deal. They finished the coloring page together, Kira teaching David the proper way to color a space dragon. When that was done, Kira grew restless, energy building despite her worry. Can we make cookies? She asked hopefully. Mama usually says yes when she has to work late. They made cookies, or at least attempted to. David had basic cooking skills but had never worked with a 6-year-old assistant before. Kira was enthusiastic if not particularly accurate with measurements. Flour ended up on both of them. The kitchen looked like a disaster zone, but Kira laughed, a genuine sound that pushed the worry back. They put the cookies in the oven and started cleaning up the mess. David? Kira asked while wiping down the counter with a cloth. Do you like my mama? Like, really like her? David chose his words carefully. I do. She's remarkable. She cries sometimes at night. When she thinks I'm asleep. Kira kept her eyes on the counter. I hear her. It makes me sad. David's chest tightened. Being strong all the time is hard, even for someone as amazing as your mama. Will you make her not cry? I can't promise that. Nobody can promise that. David knelt down to Kira's level. But I can promise to try to make her happy. And to be here when things are hard. Kira studied him with those 2 knowing golden eyes. Papa used to make her laugh all the time. She told me stories. Your papa sounds like he was a good person. I don't remember him much. Kira's voice went quiet. Does that make me bad? No, sweetheart. You were so little when he died. It's not your fault you don't remember. Mama says he'd be proud of me, but how can he be proud if he's not here to see me? David pulled Kira into a hug, feeling her small body shake with held-back tears. Because love doesn't end when someone dies. He's proud because you're kind and smart and brave. Because you take care of your mama even when you're scared. They stayed like that until the oven timer beeped. The cookies came out slightly misshapen but edible. They ate 2 each, hot and sweet, sitting at the small kitchen table. Lyra sent updates every 30 minutes. The breach was contained. Repairs were proceeding. 6 families had been evacuated safely. No casualties. Each message carried exhaustion even through text. David sent back photos of their cookie-making adventure, flour-covered smiles and slightly burned edges. Lyra responded with a heart emoji and "You two are trouble together." After dinner, which they assembled from leftovers and creative improvisation, Kira grew quieter. The excitement of the day was wearing off, leaving worry in its wake. "Want to play a game?" David suggested. "Or watch something? Will you read to me? From the book you gave me?" They settled on the couch, Kira curled against his side. David read story after story, his voice steady and calm. Kira interrupted sometimes with questions or comments, clearly trying to stay awake, to stay busy, to not think about her mother working in a dangerous situation. "David?" she asked during a pause between stories. "When Papa died, Mama was really sad. I was too little to help. I don't want her to be sad again." "What do you mean?" "If you leave, like other people did." Kira looked up at him. "Lots of people came to visit after we moved here. Mama's friends said they'd help. But they stopped coming. They got busy or moved away or just stopped." David set the book aside, giving Kira his full attention. "I'm not going anywhere, Kira. Not unless your mama asks me to leave. Promise?" "I promise to always be honest with you. And right now, honestly, I want to be here. With both of you." "Good." Kira relaxed slightly. "Because I like you. You're nice. And you make Mama smile the real smile." "The real smile?" "She has different smiles. The work smile, the tired smile, the pretend everything is okay smile. But with you, she has the happy smile. I like that one best." David felt something warm spread through his chest. "I like making her smile." They read until Kira could barely keep her eyes open. David carried her to bed, tucking her in the way he'd seen Lyra do the night before. Kira clutched her stuffed animal, already half asleep. "Don't leave," she mumbled. "Stay until Mama comes home." "I will. I promise." David sat in the living area, surrounded by evidence of their evening. Colored pencils scattered on the floor, cookie crumbs on the counter, photos on the walls showing a family rebuilt from loss. He thought about his own life, how empty his quarters would be right now if he'd left that restaurant, if he'd made the easy choice instead of the right one. His communicator buzzed. His sister checking in. "You've been there all day again." "This is serious," he typed back. "Yeah, it is." "Good. Don't screw it up." Trying not to. Lyra's updates came less frequently as the night wore on, each one shorter and more exhausted. David sent back reassurances and photos of Kira sleeping peacefully. Around midnight, his communicator rang instead of chiming with text. Lyra's face appeared smudged with coolant and exhaustion. "How is she?" "Asleep. Has been for a couple hours." David kept his voice low. "How are you?" "Tired. We saved all 6 apartments. No structural collapse, but the repairs are taking longer than expected." Lyra rubbed her face. "I'm sorry. This is a terrible way to spend your evening." "I'm not sorry. I got to hang out with a pretty cool kid, made questionable cookies, and helped out someone I care about." Lyra's expression softened. "You're covered in flour. Yeah, cookies got messy. Worth it, though. David, thank you. For staying. For taking care of her. Most people wouldn't have done this." "I'm not most people," he smiled. "Come home when you can. We'll be here. I'll probably be another 2 hours. You don't have to wait up." "I'm waiting." Lyra looked like she might cry. "Okay, I'll be home as soon as I can." After the call ended, David cleaned up the kitchen properly, organized the coloring supplies, made sure everything was ready for Lyra's return. Around 1 a.m., he heard the door open softly. Lyra entered, covered in coolant stains and metal dust, exhaustion written in every line of her body. She saw David sitting on her couch and stopped. "You stayed. You actually stayed the whole time." "I said I would." Lyra crossed to him, pulling him into a hug that spoke of gratitude and relief and something deeper. "How was she?" "Worried about you, but okay. We made cookies. She taught me about space dragons. We read until she fell asleep around 9:30. David held her carefully, aware of her exhaustion. "She told me about your different smiles." "She what?" "Said you have a work smile, a tired smile, a pretend smile." David pulled back slightly, meeting her eyes. "And a real happy smile." "She said I make you smile the real way." Lyra laughed, the sound almost breaking. "She's too perceptive for 6 years old. She's worried about you, about people leaving again." People always leave eventually. Lyra said it without bitterness, just tired acceptance. Not always. David brushed a strand of her mane back. I'm still here. It's been 2 days, David. 2 days isn't forever. No, but it's a start. They stood close, exhaustion and emotion mixing in the space between them. Lyra's communicator buzzed and she groaned. Work? Probably final reports. She checked it, then sighed. Yeah. I should shower and file these tonight so tomorrow is clearer. Go. I'll make sure everything's locked up before I leave. But when Lyra emerged from the shower 20 minutes later, David was still there heating up leftovers because she'd mentioned not eating dinner. You should be asleep in your own quarters, she said, but accepted the plate he offered. Should be, but I'm here instead. They ate together in comfortable silence. Lyra filed her reports while David cleaned up. When everything was done, it was nearly 2 a.m. I really should go home now, David said. Or you could sleep on the couch again, since you're basically already falling asleep standing up. Lyra smiled tiredly. That way Kira doesn't wake up and worry that you left. You sure? I'm sure. David settled on the couch with a blanket. Lyra paused in her bedroom doorway. David, I'm scared. Of what? Of how right this feels. Of how fast we're moving. Of getting hurt again. She looked small despite her size. Of Kira getting hurt if this doesn't work. I'm scared too, David admitted. But I think maybe the good things are worth being scared for. Maybe. Lyra smiled slightly. Good night, David. Good night, Lyra. David fell asleep thinking about different kinds of smiles and promises to small girls, and how sometimes the scariest thing was also the most important thing. And how he'd choose to stay every single time no matter how scared he was. 3 months felt like both forever and no time at all. David sat at Lyra's kitchen table on a Tuesday evening in late March, helping Kira with her homework while Lyra finished cooking dinner. This scene had become familiar, comfortable, real in a way that still surprised him sometimes. This word is impossible, Kira complained, pointing at her datapad. Why does Galactic Standard have so many weird letters? Because they wanted to make sure every species could pronounce it, David explained, leaning over to look. Try breaking it into smaller parts. Kira sounded it out slowly, her accent mixing Drakari musical tones with human pronunciation. When she got it right, she beamed. I did it. You did. Good job. Lyra glanced over from the stove, catching David's eye. That real smile Kira had mentioned. The one David had learned to recognize and treasure. 3 months had taught him the subtle differences in Lyra's expressions. The way her scales shifted color slightly with her moods. How she always checked on Kira twice before truly relaxing. They'd taken it slow by some standards, faster than light by others. David spent most evenings here now, but still kept his own quarters. They'd had the serious conversations about expectations and boundaries, about what they both wanted long-term. They'd navigated their first disagreement, their first real test of communication. They'd figured out routines and compromises, and somehow, impossibly, it was working. Dinner's ready, Lyra announced, bringing plates to the table. Kira, homework away, please. They ate together, conversation flowing easily. Kira talked about school, about her friend who'd gotten in trouble for sneezing fire in class. Lyra shared frustrations about a difficult project at work. David contributed his own stories from the Environmental Systems Department. Normal, domestic, family. After dinner, Lyra's communicator chimed. She checked it and smiled. It's from my mother on Drakkar Prime. Video call scheduled for tomorrow evening. She glanced at David. She wants to meet you. Officially, I mean. We've talked about you, but she wants to actually see you. David's stomach tightened. That's a big step. Too big? Lyra asked carefully. No, just big. He smiled to show he meant it. I'd like to meet her. Kira bounced excitedly. Grandmother will love you. She already thinks you're great because I told her you read to me and make Mama smile. Kira, Lyra said, embarrassed. You didn't have to tell her that. But it's true. David laughed, helping clear the table. This was his life now. These casual moments, these normal evenings. He thought back to Christmas Eve, sitting alone in that restaurant, convinced he was unlovable and boring. How wrong he'd been. His communicator buzzed. His sister, her timing impeccable as always. Still going strong with Dragon Lady and Cute Kid? He typed back, meeting the mother-in-law tomorrow, Send help. You'll be fine. You're stupidly sincere. Parents love that. Later, after Kira went to bed, David and Lyra sat on the couch together, not quite touching but comfortable in each other's space. The station's artificial night had fallen, lights dimmed to encourage circadian rhythms. "There's something I need to tell you," Lyra said, her voice uncertain. David felt his chest tighten. "Okay. The station is hosting a spring festival next week. Big community gathering, all species, lots of traditions mixed together." Lyra twisted her hands together. "I usually go with just Kira, but this year I'd like you to come with us, officially, as my partner." The word hung in the air between them. Partner. They hadn't used that term before, had danced around definitions and labels. "People will know," Lyra continued. "My coworkers, Kira's teachers, our neighbors. Everyone will see us together and understand what it means." "And that scares you," David said gently. "Terrifies me. Because once people know, once it's public, it's real. If things end..." She trailed off, the fear evident in her voice. David took her hand, feeling the warmth of her scales. "Do you want things to end?" "No, but wanting isn't enough. My mate died. My marriage ended through tragedy, not choice, but it still ended. I learned that wanting something doesn't mean you get to keep it. You're right. Nothing is guaranteed." David squeezed her hand. "But I can tell you this, I'm not going anywhere. I want to be your partner. Officially, publicly, all of it, even knowing it might not work, that we're different species with different lifespans and different needs. Even knowing that." David shifted to face her fully. "Lyra, I could get hit by a malfunctioning maintenance drone tomorrow. You could get transferred to another station. A million things could go wrong. But I'd rather have whatever time we get than spend my life playing it safe and being alone." Lyra's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You say these things so easily." "Like it's simple. It is simple. It's everything else that's complicated." David smiled. "I love you. I love Kira. I want to be part of this family you've built. So yes, I'll go to the festival with you. I'll meet your mother tomorrow. I'll stand next to you publicly and be proud to be called your partner." "You love me?" Lyra's voice cracked slightly. "Yeah, have for a while now. Just didn't know when the right time was to say it." Lyra kissed him. Properly. Deeply, with 3 months of held-back emotion finally finding release. When they pulled apart, she was crying. "I love you too. Both of us do. Kira and me." She laughed through tears. "This is insane. We met on a disastrous blind date 3 months ago. Best disaster of my life." They sat together, hands linked, processing this new reality. Outside, the station hummed with life. Thousands of beings from dozens of species, all living their interconnected lives. Somewhere in all of that, David and Lyra had found each other. "I need to tell you something too," David said. "I put in a request to move to quarters in this residential sector. 3-bedroom unit, actually. If you and Kira ever wanted to..." He trailed off, suddenly nervous. "I mean, not immediately. But eventually, if that's something you'd want." Lyra stared at him. "You're planning for a future. With us. Yeah, is that okay?" "It's more than okay. It's terrifying and perfect." She leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. "Let's take it step by step, though. Festival first, then your new quarters, then we'll see about the rest." "Sounds good." They stayed like that until Lyra's eyes started closing, exhaustion from her long workday finally catching up. David helped her to bed, kissed her goodnight, and settled on the couch with his now familiar blanket. The couch was uncomfortable and his back would complain in the morning, but he wouldn't trade these nights for anything. His communicator showed a message from his sister. "I'm proud of you. Mom would be too." David smiled and turned off the light. The next evening, the video call with Lyra's mother went better than David had dared hope. The older Drakari was intimidating but kind, asking direct questions about his intentions and background. Kira kept interrupting with enthusiastic endorsements of David's character, which helped break the tension. "You make my daughter happy," Lyra's mother said finally, her Drakari accent thick but her English clear. "And you're good to my granddaughter. These things matter most." "They matter most to me too," David agreed. After the call ended, Lyra collapsed onto the couch in relief. "That went well. She only threatened me twice." "I counted," David grinned. "That means she likes you. If she didn't, there would have been at least 5 threats." The spring festival arrived on a Saturday with clear artificial weather and cheerful decorations throughout the station. David met Lyra and Kira at their quarters, nervous energy making his hands shake slightly. "You okay?" Lyra asked, noticing. "Yeah, just... Big day." Kira grabbed both their hands. "Come on, we're going to be late." They walked to the community center together, a family unit visible to everyone. David noticed the looks, some curious, some approving, some judgmental. Lyra held his hand tighter. The festival buzzed with activity. Mixed species groups celebrated spring traditions from dozens of worlds, food stalls, performance stages, children's games. Kira ran ahead to meet her friends with strict instructions to check in every 30 minutes. Lyra's co-workers found them first. David had met most of them briefly before, but this was different. This was Lyra introducing him as her partner, not just a friend. "So you're the human who finally got through her defenses," said one, a friendly Centaurian named Bella. "About time. She's been alone too long." "Leave him alone, Bella," Lyra said, but she was smiling. One co-worker stood apart from the group. Torvin, a Drakari male Lyra had mentioned before. David noticed how the others quieted slightly when he approached. "You're still here," Torvin said, his tone neutral but his eyes assessing. "I am," David replied simply. "Lyra deserves someone who understands Drakari culture. Our traditions, our ways, it wasn't quite a challenge, but close." "You're right. She does." David met his gaze steadily. "That's why I've been learning. Basic Drakari language from Kira, cultural practices from Lyra, customs from research. I won't ever fully understand what it's like to be Drakari, but I'm trying to respect and honor it." Torvin studied him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he smiled slightly. "Good. She deserves someone who tries." He nodded to Lyra. "You chose well. This one has spine." After he walked away, Lyra let out a breath. That was Torvin's version of approval. Really? That's what approval looks like? For him, yes. They spent the afternoon participating in different cultural activities, trying foods from various worlds, watching performances. Kira appeared periodically, dragging David to see something exciting before running off again with her friends. The community embraced them naturally, treating their relationship as just another part of the station's diverse social fabric. As evening fell and the festival wound down, they walked home together. Kira held David's hand, chattering about everything she'd seen and done. Lyra walked on her other side, peaceful and happy. "David?" Kira asked as they neared their quarters. "Will you come to my school presentation next week? We're doing family traditions and I want to talk about human and Drakari Christmas, but I need you there to help." David glanced at Lyra, who nodded. "I'd be honored." Inside the apartment, Kira got ready for bed while David and Lyra collapsed on the couch, exhausted from the day. "That went well," Lyra said. "It did. Your community is kind. They see what I see. That you're good for us." Lyra leaned into him. "I'm glad I showed up late to that restaurant. I'm glad I waited." "What made you stay?" Lyra asked. "Really? You could have left so many times." David thought about it, about that night and every moment since. "I think I was tired of running from anything that might hurt. My divorce taught me that avoiding pain meant avoiding everything good too. So when you came through that door looking terrified and sorry and hopeful, I decided to choose the scary thing, the thing that might hurt but might also be amazing. And it's amazing. Scary sometimes, but amazing." Lyra kissed him softly. "I love you. I love you too." Kira appeared in pajamas, clutching her worn stuffed animal. "I'm ready for stories." They read together, the three of them on Kira's bed. David did the voices, making Kira giggle. Lyra provided commentary. When Kira finally fell asleep, they tiptoed out. "I should head to my quarters tonight," David said, though he didn't really want to. "Give you space, or you could stay." "The couch, I mean, since you're already here," Lyra smiled. "And because I sleep better when you're here." So David stayed. He fell asleep on the familiar couch, listening to the soft sounds of the apartment settling. His apartment. Not officially, not yet, but emotionally it had become his home. In the morning, he woke to Kira poking his shoulder. "David, are you awake? Can you make pancakes?" He opened his eyes to find both Kira and Lyra looking down at him, matching smiles on their faces. "Pancakes sound perfect," he said. They made breakfast together, the three of them moving around the kitchen with practiced coordination. Flour ended up on Kira's scales. David burned the first batch. Lyra rescued the second. They ate together at the small table, planning their day. This was his life now. These quiet mornings, these ordinary moments, no dramatic declarations or grand gestures. Just presence, consistency, choice renewed every single day. David thought about that man sitting alone in a restaurant on Christmas Eve, convincing himself he was unlovable. That man had been so wrong. He wasn't boring. He wasn't too predictable. He was exactly what he needed to be. Someone who stayed. Someone who showed up. Someone who chose love even when it was scary. "What are you thinking about?" Lyra asked, noticing his expression. "Just how lucky I am," David said honestly. "We're lucky too," Kira declared through a mouthful of pancake. "You're the best second-favorite human ever. Who's first?" David asked, mock-offended. "Still Ruth, but you're really close now." They laughed together, and David realized this was happiness. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real and worth every moment of fear and doubt that had led here. He'd waited 90 minutes in a restaurant on Christmas Eve. He'd stayed when leaving would have been easier. And that choice, that simple choice to remain in that chair and give someone a chance, had changed everything. Some things were worth waiting for. Some people were worth fighting for. And sometimes they were the same thing. Outside, the station cycled through its artificial day. Inside, a human engineer, a Drakari structural specialist, and a small green dragon girl finished their breakfast and started planning their weekend. 3 separate lives that had become one story, one family, one future built on patience and presence and the courage to stay when it mattered most. David had found what he'd been looking for without knowing he needed it, and he would never stop being grateful for that disastrous, perfect, life-changing blind date.